Welcome to Around Town, and we are here to tell you about the annual event every July where the community churches get together and exchange pulpits and just enjoy fellowship with each other. And who better to come back to talk about it? We've got Pastor James Gaillard, of course, of Word Tabernacle. We've got Bishop Shelton Daniel, who is with Greater Joy. And this year we're joined by Pastor Alice Curl Johnson of Trinity Lutheran, and we are at your church today, so thank you for that. And you started this 8 years ago, right?
I did not start it 8 years ago. Actually, it started, the first one was in July 2007, and it was Reverend Gaillard.
Oh, way to go.
Reverend Gerganus, who partnered together, and that was after Memorial Day weekend blitz, where congregations went to work on the apartments, on the housing. And after that, you convened a meeting with some of the local pastors to talk about what could we do, and it was just unanimously felt that the place we could start was worshiping together.
Right.
And so we quickly said, okay, the time is now, so let's do it. And so we were intentional in having it be diverse, and also that every worship service was going to have Holy Communion, because we thought we could gather as worshiping people around the Word and also in sharing the meal.
Right.
And how interesting. I never have heard that story in the last 3 or 4 years that I've enjoyed having the opportunity to promote this, that you tell us a little bit more about the process of coming up with this.
Yeah, our church is really young. We've been in the city a couple of years, and we just had an interest in trying to develop Claremont Apartments. And so over Memorial Day weekend, I have no idea how many people came together. I believe it was hundreds of people.
Oh, it was.
Came together to work, just to tear out apartments, that kind of thing. We were trying to really work this negotiation with the powers that be. And we had such an amazing experience, different races, denominations, generations of people. And it felt like at the end of that, then it was just kind of over. And so we're like, wow, look at what we can do if we just all come together. What can we agree on and come together about? And so to Pastor Alice's point, we said, you know what, we can worship together. And let's not worry about the things we disagree about, because we know doctrinally and theologically we're going to have some different slants and some different perspectives. That's part of the reason why we have all these different denominations, right? So, but we knew that there were some things that we really agreed upon. The inerrancy of the Word of God, the exclusivity of Jesus Christ, our fellowship are, central to Jesus. We knew we could agree on that. And so we started coming together. And so Richard Gerganus and Church on the Rise and a bunch of churches got together, and we had service for the month of July. And we had communion, as Pastor said, and then we would receive an offering at every service, and then we would identify ahead of time what area, agency, or not-for-profit that offering would go to. So we know none of the preachers, were paid to preach, and none of the churches were compensated to hold the service. 100% of the proceeds will go to some area charity or some area not-for-profit. And even though the story is great in terms of how it got started, I mean, really a bunch of the credit goes to Pastor Alice, because over the years, just to be able to keep momentum going, and this is 8 years now, right?
It's the eighth
this
event.
This is the 8th year. And so, I mean, it's very difficult. I mean, you know how things lose momentum over time. But she has managed to help keep the momentum along with Pastor Joyner at Canida Chapel and the chaplain of the hospital. And then over the years, other churches have come on board. So Greater Joy has come on board. And Bishop Daniel, he preached last night at the service we just had.
Church of the Good Shepherd.
Right, and now that church has a new rector, a new pastor, and so he'll get involved, and and so we wind up with we have 240 churches in Rocky Mount, so we can rotate through, and as Pastor said, it's really important that it's diverse. And so one of the things that were important to us is that we maintain an appreciation for how other denominations worship, how other races of people worship. So teaching our people that if you have a Hammond organ in the predominantly black church, but a pipe organ in the predominantly white church, one is not more spiritual than the other. It's just different. And so, having our people have a sense of appreciation for going through the liturgy and going through the worship process is so valuable in terms of how we interact. And then what happens is you see each other at Harris Teeter, or you see each other somewhere, and you don't know names, but you're like, wait a minute, I saw you at Trinity Lutheran, I saw you at Church of the Good Shepherd or First Baptist, or whatever the case is. So over the years, I think it's just been tremendously valuable just to watch how everybody's kind of come together.
Tell us about last night, Bishop Daniel.
It was different.
Okay.
It was very different, but an awesome experience. Just to move out of your own element and as Pastor Gary said, and just appreciate someone else's way of worship. And I think that's what the takeaway is for us, is that we don't have some monopoly on worship or how God would appreciate our worship. And that's one of the things that I appreciated and my people enjoyed, being in the midst of and fellowship with other. And I think that's one of the other pieces we're trying to really promote, is that we're so separate in all that we do, that this is a time that we can put aside how we feel about the way we should worship and how we feel about the things in the worship experience, and just come together and enjoy what each other does. So, in my approach yesterday was just do what I normally do, and the Church of the Good Shepherd did what they normally do, and so we got flavor from understanding our ways of worship, and it worked well.
It begins at 6.
Yes.
Every Sunday in July, and we'll talk about where each of them is to be held and who will be speaking. Is there a sermon?
There's a sermon. I did the sermon yesterday. I think in our upcoming week, it just begins to move around to different pastors, and we make sure that the host church is not the person that does the sermon. So then we also force a sense of fellowship with each other. So next week it's going to be, I can't remember exactly where.
It's going to be at Ebenezer Baptist.
Ebenezer,
and
that's right,
Reverend
Pastor.
Tyler Williams from First United
Right.
Methodist.
So we'll be at Ebenezer with Tyler preaching, and it'll just foster us to move outside of our
What was your
comfort.
topic?
Yesterday I preached, our whole message is on hope. So yesterday I talked about the fact that there's still hope for all of us. And my topic was, I believe there's still hope for you.
So is there a theme that's chosen?
Right, and that's part of the initial planning that happens. Every year there is an identified theme, as well as some core text that get used at all of the services. This year the theme is hope, and so our primary texts come from Romans and from Hebrews. And that way there's kind of a thread that goes
Right.
through, and I think that there's something good in sitting together with a series like that.
And I noticed at the first one that all the clergy were invited to come early and wear a certain color, perhaps, if they had it, and just show unity, which is so good for all of us to see, because we are a diverse community and we need to embrace that and celebrate that. And this is we're better than the house of God to do that.
And that in and of itself is an example of an appreciation for various denominations, because not every church pays attention to the same type of liturgical elements. So where we may get an email that says, if in your particular belief system you robe up and wear a robe, and then the color, is green, for example, which, the color of a stole, which would have some type of symbolic, theological representation or meaning, even every church does not really embrace that. So that in and of itself is a good takeaway and a good learning. And so we do insist that the host church models their type of worship, whatever that is. We don't interfere with that at all. Whatever their worship looks like, that's what we do.
And their communion.
Absolutely. Having their worship, and that's a good point.
Right,
Worship and communion.
and in that, just as the example, because we did host the very first worship service, and I will never forget standing there in front of folks trying to do the opening welcome. And I said, for those of you who have never worshiped in Lutheran format, in our tradition, you're going to be introduced to Lutheran aerobics, because we stand, we sit, we kneel. But I'll let you know when you do that. And people did with great reverence, where it was really recognized. We had overflow because we couldn't fit everybody in our sanctuary, so we had an overflow space. And a lot of our local members went into the overflow to be hospitable. But when they saw that when I said, please kneel, that people who were guests knelt on the floor, that touched them deeply to know that our tradition was being honored that way.
Well, and one would think the people who would come would embrace the traditions of the host church. I mean, that's part of the people of God tend to do that more than maybe other people.
It's amazing, Jean, just to see that even in something that we all agree on, which is communion, there's still so many differences, so many nuances in what we do, but to find that everyone will adapt to whatever environment we're in for the sake of Christ. For the sake of Christ. It is amazing to me just to see us being able to. It's strange because, you know, I dealing with our folks is like, you know, here everyone drinks out of the same cup, or at Pastor Galliot, he does it differently. At Greater Joy, we do it individual wrap cups. So it's just a huge difference wherever you are, but to find that everyone can come to the agreement that we're going to do Holy Communion is amazing.
And we're all celebrating the same sacrament.
That's right.
All together. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back and talk some more. Stay with us, please.
Are you just starting out on your own and want to be independent? Do you have a family and need a bigger home? Are the kids moving out? And are you downsizing? First Carolina Realty can help. A 1 or 2 bedroom apartment or house for those starting out. A 3 or 4 bedroom home for a growing family. Rentals, sales, new homes, pre-owned homes, investment property in the city or in the country. Call First Carolina Realty. Now is a good time to make that move. Real estate prices are right, interest rates are low, and there is a fantastic selection of homes available.
First Carolina Realty is a fully licensed real estate firm with offices at 3151 Zebulon Road in Rocky Mount.
If you have rental properties and are tired of the headaches associated with managing them yourself, or if you're looking for a new management team to manage your rental properties, call First Carolina Realty at 252-985-2321. Visit our webpage at firstcarolinarealty.com. We will gladly help you with all your real estate needs.
Hi, I'm Jean Almond of Almond's Drugs, and I want to invite you to be Almond's customer for your prescriptions. Our average pharmacy wait for your prescription is only 10 to 15 minutes. We have drive-through windows at both locations. We will deliver your prescription free. Our friendly and very experienced pharmacists specialize in consultation, and we are locally owned and have been a loyal part of your community for over 70 years. Just make one phone call to us and we'll make the transfer so we can start taking care of you.
Well, thank you for joining us, and we are still talking about the annual community worship services that go on in the city of Rocky Mount. This is our 8th year of doing it, and so thanks to Jean, we're able to talk about this today. I've been joined with Pastor Alice Johnson-Curl, who is the pastor here at Trinity Lutheran. She's blessed us to be able to be in her facility. Bishop Shelton Daniel, who pastors Greater Joy, and so we're just kind of catching up in terms of what's happening. I do want to pause and just invite you, those of you that are watching the broadcast. We really do focus much more on our similarities and our differences. It's a wonderful opportunity to worship in a very safe environment, safe in the sense of working out different faith traditions, safe in the sense that I can worship differently than someone else and yet still feel embraced by what other groups of people do. And you'll be there with a bunch of other people that are experiencing it for the first time. And so one of the things we get to do that is such a blessing is that we get a chance to be a blessing as the body of Christ to area not-for-profits and organizations. So historically, the financial offering has gone to a bunch of different charities, and Pastor Alice is going to share a little bit with us about who those charities have been and kind of how those decisions are made.
Right. Usually it comes with conversation, and sometimes it's tied in with what the theme is. So far, we've twice contributed monies to Tri River Mission Clinic, and we've also contributed to Downey's Partnership for Children, for Habitat for Humanity, for United Community Ministries. We also had, I think, a really solid partnership with the Nash Foundation when the effort was first being made for the new ER. And our focus, the monies went designated towards the children's ER, part of that. And now this year being my sister's house, which I think for me personally really encapsulates the whole understanding of what it is to be people of hope.
And I think historically too, Jean, as we looked at the not-for-profits and the charities, they have very much connected with theme. So there have been seasons where we were concerned about hunger and homelessness, seasons where we were concerned about healthcare disparities. And so we have a tendency to address social ills when we come together. I mean, that's generally ground that we can agree upon in terms of everyone should have equal standing. And so we've historically tried to do that. The response has been phenomenal. People come, they have such a great time. We have fellowship, we didn't mention that. At the end of worship, we gather together and just nothing fancy, just have an opportunity to sit around and talk. And for me as a pastor, one of the most meaningful times for me is watching people, because we're all so busy and we all wish we had a little bit more time. So watching people hang around and engage each other in fellowship, talking and just pulling up a chair, having some lemonade and just talking for a few moments. People that would probably not speak to each other if they encountered each other on the street because they're so different. And so that's been a good takeaway, for me. And so, Sheldon, what was the experience of your people? I know this is the first time a lot of your people showed up yesterday. What was some of the things you were hearing from your folks?
Well, they to just ride off of what you're talking about, they really love the fact that we got an opportunity to see things that we have not done before, but the major piece is just the fellowship. When our folks get a chance of faith to rub shoulders with Pastor Alice folks in an environment that we have not been in before, it just opens our eyes again. And I don't want to beat this dead horse, but for us to think that we're always right is first of all a red flag for me, for any group to think they're always right. So we get an opportunity to just experience and maybe have our eyes open to some new things. So they enjoyed it, and it was kind of strange for me out of the gate. It's a quiet environment. My church is lively, so you come into a quiet environment, but it was well received that they are usually quiet, but our folks were not quiet. So then it was like contagious in the house. And it was a great experience for all of our churches to be together.
And that's an interesting point, because I know when Reverend Dennis Starvel has done your Bible study, he said, I kind of like this feedback I'm getting. And then I think he went back to First Baptist and he said, come on, y'all, encourage me a little bit here. So, but this is just the best of all environments to get together in the house of God and see that we're all on the same level. We're all children of God, and to make new friends. I've never found anything but a very hospitable, warm, welcoming group. And then, as you mentioned, when you see people afterwards around the community, they speak to you, and weren't you there? And it forges new relationships and new friendships. And I have to think, Pastor Gary, that your efforts now to help our community address some of the issues we have, some of the same people who were engaged in these community worship services will be right there helping you.
Yeah, as we've talked about, the formation of Community Coalition of Eastern North Carolina, and we talked about bringing churches together around common causes, there are many, if not all, of the same churches. And I think overall, when we get over the barrier that sometimes theologically and doctrinally we see things just a little different, but they really are secondary and tertiary issues. The primary things I think we really do see very similarly, which is one of the things I love about a common text, because when we do these services, we have a common text, an Old and New Testament perspective generally about a theme. This year is hope, And it's interesting to listen to different pastors in different theological perspectives share their understanding of that text, and what the takeaway is, and none of it is wrong. I always sit there. We were at Church of the Good Shepherd last night, and I was standing there a lot of times because there was a lot of standing up and sitting down. But I really appreciate it because our churches tend to be louder, and we have sometimes music that overrides the lyrics to our music. I appreciated forcing me, the environment being so quiet forced me to pay attention to the lyrics of the songs. And I found myself very appreciative for what they were deliberately depositing in their people, which was a very deliberate message in the music of, when you leave here, you need to make a difference in the world. Like, I really appreciated that.
Right.
So, you go to some churches and the focus is very much on how we encounter God at this moment. And then you go to other churches and it's very much about, when we leave this encounter at this moment, we need to be responsive to the community around us. And the truth of the matter is, I think the right answer that honors God the most is somewhere pretty close to the middle. I don't really think it's on the extremes. And so this exposure really gives you an opportunity to kind of wrap your arms around that and appreciate that.
And to know, Gene and Pastor, when this whole thing is all said and done, what we encountered yesterday is what heaven is supposed to look like. It's not going to be all Lutheran or Baptist or non-denominational or whatever cultural backgrounds we come from. You're going to have a coalition of people. And if we can't settle this thing, put aside differences and settle this thing long enough to just get to know James and deal with him where he is and in his church environment, just think about us trying to do that there before we do this here. And I take away from it that I get an opportunity to worship with the same brothers and sisters that I'm going to be with in eternity.
And we honor God by
We
doing
honor
that.
God by doing that.
And speaking of reaching out to the community, Bishop Daniel, tell us about your upcoming community event.
We have a yearly event that I've been doing for many years, but in Rocky Mount for the last 5 years. It's called our Family and Friends Community Festival. And it is comprised of community churches. This year it will be myself, and which is Greater Joy, and Pastor Gaillard at Word Tabernacle, and then Pastor Richard Goganis at Church on the Rise, where we are trying to bring together not only the community but some help for the community. So in this setting will be dental care and blood pressure checks and vision care and all of these things that Word Tabernacle, Greater Joy, and Church on the Rise give this to the community. There's no cost for food, there's no cost for games and rides, and no cost for the entertainment. So it is our way of saying that the church is there to help the community. There are many, with the health disparities, there are many that can't get dental work, so we bring in the Baptist bus. There are many that the only way they can get their blood pressure checks and things is to drive up our cost at the emergency room. So we try to rid that problem and bring it to the community. In years past, we did blood drives and donations. So we're still doing the blood drives and donations, but not just at this particular festival. But those are the kind of things we do. So all of the food, all of the rides, all of the games, all of the health care that we provide between our churches, these things are done at no cost to the community.
And it's Saturday the 26th.
Saturday,
of
July the
What time?
26th is from 10 to 2.
Okay. I think we need to mention the upcoming. You want to tell the ones that are...
We are coming up on, this next service is going to be on Sunday, July 20th, 6 p.m., Ebenezer Baptist Church right there on Raleigh Road. Reverend Tyler Williams, the assistant pastor at First United Methodist, is preaching. Then July 27th, Lakeside Baptist. That's Pastor Jody's church, and right across from City Lake. And Reverend Garland Jones will be the preacher. And then the final one is in August, which we skipped the July 4th weekend. That's at Greater Love Christian Church, Pastor Audrey McCarter Hedgepest Church, right on South Church Street as you almost get into Sharpsburg. And then our very own Pastor Alice Johnson Curl is going to be preaching. And so a great gathering of people, a really safe place to experience different type of worship, and the fellowship is phenomenal. The communion experiences are wonderful to watch how different churches experience the communion. So it's a wonderful opportunity, I think, for the city to come together and to worship. We invite, bring your whole Sunday school class, or bring your women's group or your youth group. I really would encourage people that have youth groups to let your youth groups participate. I tell our church, if everyone would just pick one service out of the 4 and attend, you can't make them all, but don't miss them all.
Right.
We've got very little time left, but I get asked everywhere I go around town, the Home Depot building, what's the status? Can you share that?
We're coming very close to closing. The sign gets changed this week. That'll say Future Home of Word Tabernacle Church. So we're excited about that. We're a few weeks out still from closing. We're just waiting for Home Depot to fix a stormwater drainage issue. And so we're getting close. And we're excited because Bishop is already ready to buy our building. And so we have to kind of, move that along so he can get into our building. But again, this is another example of all the partnerships that go on amongst all these churches.
Absolutely. I was going to say this is another cause to celebrate. So I echo what Pastor Galliard and Bishop Daniel and Pastor Johnson Curl say. Please come, pick one of these nights, come to all of them if you can, but they start at 6 o'clock and you will be so blessed if you do. Thank y'all, and thank you. See you next week.
You.